The initial slaughter took merely minutes. Of the original 30,000 fighting men, it's the dying years of the 2nd century BC, and Roman consul Gnaeus Papirius Carbo marches to confront a new northern threat to the Roman Republic. Their
Cannae is debatably the worst battle I've ever reacted to.
Tauristi allies having requested aid, Carbo is confident he has the barbarians at ease and totally at his mercy. As he nears the city of Noricum, he spies out the best location from which to launch his ambush against the Cimbri and Teutones tribes. Yet as thoughts of establishing a temporary camp cross his mind, messages begin to hurriedly pass down the column. The ground shakes with the beating of great war drums, and the war cries of his foes echo in the cold breeze as thousands of—
I swear, these types of videos, right, that I keep on reacting to, that Redicon keeps on suggesting me, it is always like this. It's always like a freaking ambush.
Cimbri and Teutones warriors begin their charges. Carbo and his centurions frantically bark orders for their men to form up. Alas, the barbarian warriors swiftly smash into the surprised legionaries. Carbo's hopes of betraying this foreign folk and proudly entering Rome in a triumph melt away into the pit of his stomach as the screams of his men begin to shatter the air. The Cimbrian War had now truly begun. And speaking of beginnings, one of the most played—
All right, that's insane freaking
was sparked by Roman paranoia of migrating folk. A few years before the onset of hostilities, the Cimbri, a Germanic folk inhabiting the area roughly corresponding to the Jutland Peninsula, left their lands. Unfortunately, little is known about them. Even their Germanic identity is being disputed, with a possible Celtic origin. Strabo doubts that the flooding theory of displacement truly occurred. However, whatever their exact origins or reasons, the Cimbri, likely numbering in the hundreds of thousands, marched menacingly south. En route to their fated first encounter with the Roman army, the Cimbri, along with their allies the Teutones, were confronted by the Boii people in the Hercynian forest, now modern-day southern Germany. Unwilling to cede their lands, the horde was beaten back and forced on. It was then that the Germanic alliance was similarly denied settlement by the Scordisci, a Balkan tribe. Reorienting west, the clash with Rome swiftly became an inevitability. Yet it was not angry legionaries that the Germanic warriors initially faced, but their allies. The Tauristi folk inhabited the lands of Noricum.
Wow, so that's insane. During this period of time, people were just going around, just migrating left, right, and center. Like, hey, can we live here? No? Okay, let's find, like, what? Wow, honestly, man. You know, guys, I have this YouTube channel, you know, because history is a hobby for me, right? But, you know, right now, because I said this before, like, right now, I'm like 20, in my early 20s. So, you know, if I don't die early, you know, I have my whole life ahead of me. But when I'm, like, in a better position where, you know, because I have things that I need to do to make sure that I'm on the right track, of course. But when I'm in like a much more better position, you know, like, I will be like reading so much books on history. You have no idea, especially during this period of time, because the migration period of time is probably like the most intriguing part of European history for me, to like see where all these people originally came from, the languages that they spoke. I mean, it's so fascinating. So, but that's yeah.
Too close for comfort for both the native—
And guys, you know, I said this in one of my member only videos. I said that in the future, the near future, I will start going around traveling to different countries and just learning about, historical travel vlogs. Okay, it's coming. Okay, it's coming. Okay. Originally, that was a member only announcement, but you guys can know too at this point. It's like, yeah, it's coming. Okay, I'll be traveling different parts of, and specifically to learn their history. Okay, not just a regular ass vlog. No, like historical travel vlog. Okay, a lot of you guys would definitely like to see that. I know that, especially if I ever visit some of y'all's countries. So
inhabitants and, as it transpired, for Rome. Unlike their hostile hosts beforehand, the Taurisci were unable to eject their unwanted guests and so sent word to Rome for aid. As allies and friends of the Roman people, the Senate were all too willing to oblige. One of the year's consuls, Gnaeus Papirius Carbo, raised an army of around 30,000 men and marched north, taking up a position in a pass. Carbo, as with any hot-headed and eager Roman leader of his day, must have had hopes for battle and glory vying in his mind. Such an opportunity to confront and crush an impressive enemy right on Rome's doorstep could immortalize him, as well as gain him and his men vast riches, and perhaps even the most coveted of honors, the triumph. How disappointment must have flooded over Carbo then, on receiving the barbarian ambassadors. Far from a proud and belligerent folk willing to play their part, the Cimbrian Teutones' attitude was apologetic. Perhaps cognizant of Rome's military reputation, they pledged to have no ill intentions, assuring the consul that they would vacate allied lands immediately. Perhaps through gritted teeth, Carbo agreed and supplied guides to assist the unwanted guests out of Noricum. Yet behind the smiles and nods of understanding, Carbo had no intention of allowing the barbaric host to exit allied lands unblooded. Ordering the guides to lead them by a specific path, the consul intended to march ahead and ambush the invaders further east. The traitorous move, however, was to prove his army's undoing, as the Cimbri scouts tracked Roman movements.
I can't say the N-word. I can't say the bruh, N-word moment. N-word moment. You're gonna hear me say that now. N-word moment. I don't want to say the N-word because I need YouTube to push my videos out. I'm really holding that back. But bruh, this is such an N-word moment, bruh.
Being alerted to Carbo's betrayal, the Cimbri turned the tables on the Romans. Falling mercilessly on the Romans near Norea, the sight of the larger, blue-eyed and raging northern warriors must have struck terror into the hearts of many a Roman that day. Crashing into the Roman column of march, Carbo's legionaries had no hope of effectively resisting, and the initial slaughter took merely minutes. Of the original 30,000 fighting men, a mere 6,000 escaped destruction. This given the fortuitous intervention of a great thunderstorm and the proximity of nearby woods that permitted their retreat. Perhaps among the scattered parties huddled within their cover, Gnaeus Papirius Carbo too had survived. His dreams of glory and triumph as shattered as his army, he shamefully returned to Rome, where the people
Me personally, I would not want to come back to Rome after that.
Branded the consul's defeat as a just reward from the gods for his duplicitous actions.
Oh, wow.
Following Norea, terrifying tales of the wrath of their foes, as well as darker whispered stories of the post-battle practices of the barbarian priestesses, must have frozen Roman hearts as the victorious northerners moved on. Perhaps to the great relief of those same Romans awaiting the storm, it never came.
Yeah,
Like that great
they didn't really seem to care about Rome.
terror of the Second Punic War, the Cimbrian Teutones did not press their advantage, moving westwards rather than south. It would be Gaul who would suffer in the immediate years. Rome was instead granted a precious reprieve. In 109 BC, the northern problem once again reared its head. Now the allied barbarian army was in the vicinity of Gallia Transalpina, a full Roman province, which necessarily provoked a firm response. This came in the person and army of consul Marcus Iunius Silanus, who was incidentally serving that year alongside Quintus Caecilius Metellus, the man overseeing the ongoing Jugurthine War to the south. As in Noricum, the barbarian army sent emissaries to humbly request land for payment, and perhaps, to their reckoning, they sweetened the deal further by suggesting that they could fight for Rome in return for a permanent home. Silanus sent these ambassadors on the Senate, who predictably rebuffed the suggestion. While such an agreement was quite normal in the future later imperial period, such a deal was anathema to these proud men. The result when the two forces came to blows was a grisly repeat of Nerea. Silanus's army was crushed, while its commander survived to be charged for the disaster. Luckily for Rome, however, the enemy's decision not to ravage Italia itself was also repeated. The Cimbrian Teutones pressed on through Gaul, while the Tigerini raided Gallia Transalpina itself.
Yeah, they really seem very indifferent to Italia. Don't really care about it at all.
This in turn caused a local Roman client tribe to revolt, exacerbating Rome's problems in the region. In 107 BC, the Republic sought to re-establish its dominance across the Alps and sent consul Lucius Cassius Longinus to meet the Tigerini threat. For a change, things seemed to be looking up for the Romans, as Longinus's legions defeated the barbarians near Tolosa, or modern-day Toulouse. Unfortunately for them, the avarice of the victorious commander impeded his ability to finish the job. Though the Tigerini had been broken and driven west in disorder, Longinus was loath to leave the captured baggage wagons and their loot. When the legions finally did zero in on the Tigerini, they had had plenty of time to prepare. Reinforced, the allied army ambushed Longinus's army somewhere in the Garonne Valley, near modern-day Bordeaux. This time, however, the Roman commander would not escape a soldier's death. To rub salt into the collective wound, the surviving legate, Caius Papilius Laenus, was surrounded and forced into a humiliating surrender. With 3 straight defeats
These guys are Avenger level threats
behind them and nothing to shield the homelands themselves from barbarian aggression, Rome longed for a success. In 106 BC, the consul Quintus Servilius Caepo did manage this. Caepo engaged and defeated a recently rebelled Volcae tribe. He seized Tolosa, and if rumors were true, much more besides. In taking the place, Caepio also seized a vast treasure that Orosius wrote amounted to 100,000 pounds of gold and 110,000 pounds of silver. Though sending the horde on to Marsilia, the gold conveniently disappeared en route, with fingers naturally pointing at Caepio. The theft of the treasure, though, would take a temporary back seat to imminent events. With the northern threat still overshadowing the Republic, in 105 BC, new consul Gnaeus Malleus Maximus was tasked with destroying the tribal alliance once and for all. But picking him for the expedition was not conducive to a smooth, united response to the northern threat, especially considering that the Roman Senate had his co-consul Publius Rutilius Rufus at their disposal. Rufus was a proven commander, distinguished in the Battle of Mutul, who had served alongside Jugurtha and Gaius Marius himself, under the command of Scipio Aemilianus in the Numantine War. In contrast, Mallius was a so-called novus homo, a new man, one without a long and distinguished family background. Eager to forge his own military reputation, he succeeded in getting elected to lead the consular army against the northern invaders. Proconsul Caepio especially resented Mallius's superior rank, given his own much more prestigious background. The result of this hostility within the Roman leadership was a disunited front against the decidedly united allied tribes.
We have got to the point.
Moving down the east bank of the Rhone River, the barbarian host halted near the Roman settlement of Arausio. Hostilities began poorly for the Romans. Mallius had sent a small force under his legate, Marcus Aurelius Scaurus, to scout the enemy position. However, Scaurus failed to slip away unnoticed himself, and engaging with the Cimbri, his outnumbered men were annihilated, with the ill-starred Scaurus himself being dragged before Boiorix. Dignified in captivity, Scaurus bluntly refused to cooperate with his foes, Boiorix demanding he aid his forces against his compatriots. Bluntly rejecting the suggestion, Scaurus, after apparently even being presented with the opportunity to escape, stoically remained, unable to cope with the knowledge that he and not his men had escaped. Soon after, he was executed.
What a G, though. Honestly,
Meanwhile, division plagued the Romans. Mallius occupied...
Yo, this is like the first time in a while where I see the Romans are at such a back end. Like,
a position apart from his nominal inferior, and though Mallius sent messages to Caepio to coordinate and combine their forces, Caepio brushed these off, urging Mallius to look to his own affairs. Despite not directly subordinating himself, however, Caepio did move his army to the vicinity, camping at first on the opposite side of the Rhone.
From the moment he said, freaking, like, he don't want to coordinate, I already know.
What the Cimbri and their allies made of this fractured Roman response can only be guessed at, but it's difficult to imagine anything other than confused delight washing over both Boiorix and his fellow commanders.
Bruh, N-word moment, bruh.
The tribal coalition already vastly outnumbered the Romans, perhaps fielding up to 300,000 warriors, in contrast to a maximum of about 80,000 Roman fighting men, with an additional 40,000 or so camp followers and others. In addition, Mallius had committed a fatal error in arraying his forces with their backs against the Rhone, cutting off any means of retreat. Mallius too was not enforcing strict discipline within his camp. Caepio's men had urged their commander to convene with his hated rival, and the conference went about as well as could be expected, with the two men parting on bad terms, and Caepio outright refusing participation in Mallius's plan of attack. Caepio, however, would not long hang back, and perhaps fearful that Mallius would crush the enemy without him, and thus take all the glory for himself, the proconsul relocated across the river and closer to the foe. The final nail in the coffin for the Romans' chances of a coordinated effort came with the tribal emissaries' arrival. As with their previous interactions, Boiorix and his fellow kings desired a settlement, but given their past victories, they now demanded Mallius, as the superior officer on site, grant them free land to occupy and grain to feed them. Mallius, of course, rejected any deal as an un-Roman admission of weakness. The very fact, however, that the enemy had rightly sent their representatives to negotiate with Mallius provoked an envious rage in Caepio, with the proconsul declaring he would have ordered the northern envoys executed. Caepio, perhaps refusing to allow a mere novus homo from gaining credit for neutralizing the barbarian threat, moved his forces out to strike first. Rebuffed once again, Boiorix and his fellow kings ordered their army to fall upon the divided Roman soldiers. Specific details on the battle are absent. However, it was Caepio's army who surely first felt the wrath of the barbarian host. Caepio's men must be imagined then confidently awaiting the wild charges. Not an ordered and stoic line of warriors, but a tsunami of frenzied and rage-fueled barbarians, each man on average of greater stature and frame. Their speed must have been shocking, this a noted tactic of the tribesmen, in conjunction with sheer numbers.
Guys, I don't think I've ever seen a Roman army get defeated like so freaking quick in any of... I've reacted to so many battles of Rome. Like, they're literally just sweeping them. Like, what
the
hell?
Cimbri are known to have used great drums stretched across the sides of their wagons, and thus we can only imagine the confidence of Caepio's men disintegrate as an overwhelming beat shook the ground with the barbarians' charges, the howls of foreign tongues piercing their ears, interspersed with their war cries.
I've recently come to...
The initial waves may have been barely contained, but we do know that Caepio's legionaries were shattered and routed. It's likely then that the proconsul's ranks were compromised or flanked. Either way, the survivors were driven back or fled towards the waiting ranks of Mallius's army, who had deployed out from their camp. At this site, Mallius's ill-disciplined men were likely quickly infected by terror themselves, as the enraged Cimbri and their allies were not far behind Caepio's army's routing fragments. With just the remaining half of the total Roman forces, Mallius's men were easily overwhelmed too. Perhaps adding to this general horror were the additional novel threat of the Cimbric women. Unlike the Romans, these hardy womenfolk accompanied their men and even took up arms and fought themselves at times. It was now that the poor positioning of Rome's armies completed the disaster. As both armies were pushed back, the river barred any easy escape. Facing either the wrath of the enemy or the near-certain death of the river, many chose the latter. Between 60 and 80,000 soldiers were either put to the sword or drowned, though Arausius's claim that just 10 men escaped the calamity is perhaps gross hyperbole. What is known for sure is that this was a defeat on the scale of Cannae and later Teutoburg. Along with both armies' near total destruction, the camp followers were also set upon too, ratcheting up the death toll ever further. Among the survivors were both commanders, though Mallius hardly escaped unharmed, given he lost 2 sons that day. The proud Caepio slipped away, as well as one of his contubernales, a certain Quintus Sertorius. Sertorius, of course, would carve out his own place in Roman history as a firm foe of the Sullan regime. Remarkably, the future general, having been deprived of his steed, and after taking many wounds, dived into the treacherous Rhone. Struggling with shield...
What the... yo! This right here? Bro, oh my gosh! Oh
and
my
armor
goodness.
against
I
a
don't even know
powerful
what to say,
current.
bro.
Sertorius outlived the day, later taking particular pride in his battle wounds, the most visible of which was a put-out eye. Back across the river, however, thousands of cornered or dying Romans were not so lucky. Perhaps bizarrely to any Roman witness who yet survived, the tribesmen set about seizing the Roman plunder and dumping it into the river, while even the horses were herded into the water and drowned.
one reason for this is that wet places were sacred, the Celtic and... Oh, wow, okay.
Legionaries were strung up, strangled where they lay or stabbed, perhaps in light of their overwhelming victory. To the Cimbri and their allies, this was all a grisly offering to their gods. Maybe most horrific of all, a few particularly unlucky survivors may have been selected for special treatment by the Cimbric priestesses.
Bro, what?
Garbed in white and traversing the bloodied scene barefoot, these merciless ladies crowned their intended victims before these men were taken to be ritually killed. The luckier ones would have their throats slit, their blood caught in a brass drum, and the priestesses receiving a divine message to relay to their leaders.
Oh my...
The unluckier men were disemboweled or dissected, their innards examined for signs to presage military results.
Oh, God!
News of the disaster spread rapidly to Rome, and a vast wave of mourning began, mixed with near panic. Despite their general disgust of the
Breast. Oh, yo, that shit shivers down my spine. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, chills went down my spine just thinking about what happened to those unfortunate people.
The Romans, for the last time in their long history, resorted to human sacrifice themselves, burying alive 2 Greek and Gallic men and women. Despite the magnitude of their latest loss, however, amazingly, the Allied army did not press on to Italia, but instead split their forces. The Cimbri moved southwest across the Pyrenees, carving a new path of destruction through the Iberian Peninsula
they just really don't care
for the next 3 years. The Teutones remained to wander northern and western Gaul, with the horde only uniting once again in 102 BC. Meanwhile, though surviving the disaster, both Malleus and Caepio would be prosecuted for their mismanagement of the battle. Malleus, in addition to losing 2 sons, was also effectively broken politically, with Publius Rutilius Rufus in practice serving as sole consul. The seasoned Rufus acted decisively by raising another force to defend Rome. To hasten their training, he further hired gladiatorial trainers to teach the green troops. Though we know now that the northern threat to Rome was non-existent, this was far from certain for the shaken Roman people at the time. Rufus obviously took the threat seriously, as in addition to the aforementioned, he also compelled young men to swear oaths not to leave Italia, while outright barring any man below 25 from embarking by boat from Italia, lest they shirk their duty to defend their republic. Though a dark day in the Roman psyche, however, Arausio was the nadir of the conflict. The Jugurthine War was over, and the people turned to Gaius Marius, Rome's victor and veteran military commander, who was now free to turn his full attention to this greater barbarian threat. Download Raid using my...
Shit. Look, man, if you like my reactions and you have videos like this you would love to see my reaction to, you know, comment it in the comments below, man. Like, eventually I will do it. If you are new to my channel, you made it all the way here, definitely subscribe. I mean, you took all this time to watch the whole video, definitely subscribe, man. Especially if you like what you just saw, what you just witnessed, definitely. There's more to come. I literally upload every single day. So, you know, if you're a dedicated viewer of mine and you haven't already, I recommend you check out the channel membership. Like I said, it's only 99 cents a month. And this is why I say dedicated viewers, because not just anyone, okay, like the ones who actually like watching my videos, who are constantly binge watching me, you know, etc., etc. Like that membership is for them, okay? And like I said, I purposely made it cheap anyway, so that, you know, you guys aren't really like spending too much money or anything. The perks that you get is quicker responses to comments. Your suggestions are done much more quicker, etc., etc. I'm just gonna link it in the pinned comments below. If not, you could just go on my channel page and you could just hit Join and you'll see the explanation video where I explain all the perks that you get. Anyways, man, thank you for watching and goodbye.